Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Howard Company's Branding, Signage, and Technology podcast. Today I am here with a handful of people. Gene Jones, our Director of Marketing, Sina, our President and CEO, and Gary Kurtz, our VP of Sales and Marketing. So we're pretty early on in this podcast, and I want to have a discussion of what is branding, signage, and technology, and why it's important. So if we can just start there, going around that simple question.
Sure, I can start.
Okay.
So one of the things we talk about is that one of our missions is to connect our customers with their customers. And so I think branding, signage, and technology does that. So it's a visual display of what the customer wants to represent as part of their brand, but also part of their menu often of options for their customers. And that is represented in a nice visual way to their customers. And then the technology piece is often the audio communications or other devices that help them to do business, to take orders, and to manage that communication with their customers.
Yeah. I would lean on more of the consistency too, the brand consistency, where you want to have a customer have the same experience at one location versus two locations versus 50 locations, depending if you're a regional or national brand. Technology is the same way. If you don't have the same technology at each, they're going to expect they're going to have a different experience. So that's kind of like when we say branding signage, it means, okay, how do we set your brand standard so that your customer can have the experience that you want them to wherever that they are? And that includes technology.
Yeah, I as the director of marketing, I think the messaging is important, and what we call branding, signage, and technology is really the entire ecosystem of products that we offer as the Howard Company, including, the digital screens, the menu boards, the structures that hold the menu boards, the graphics that go on the wall in a restaurant or in a convenience store or a bank or really any retail outlet. It's all of those different pieces of branding assets that you use throughout your organization. And then, of course, the technology piece, like Sara was saying, it's the connecting all those things together. How do we get content onto the digital screens? How do you get content onto the kiosks so that your customers can order from the kiosks? It's just pulling all that stuff together under one roof.
So what would you say some of the risks are of not adopting branding, signage, and technology strategies within your organization?
Gary, you'd be a good one to answer that one. I'll throw that one to you.
Kind of going back to what I was saying before is that if you don't have the same graphic sizes for, like, say, a menu board panel, whether it's digital or static, your customers, and you're going to have marketing people within your organization that are going to have to change several different items versus changing one. The different mediums that you use, whether it's print or digital or, there's vinyl wall graphics, there's, metals, different things like that. You want to have the same look, so it's a risk to not have those things be the same.
Yeah.
I think another risk is some of the technologies actually provide a return on investment. So order confirmation is a good example of that. So order confirmation screens visually display to that customer what they're ordering line by line as the order's being built. And they're able to see if something's wrong right away. And that way they can correct that order before it gets into their car, right? For the drive-through application, gets into their car, they've driven away, now they have a bad experience because something's not correct. And they might come back and you have to give them free food, right?
Yeah.
So reducing the amount of times where there's errors and having to give away things, right? There's actually a return on investment for that. The other one that's a big trend in the industry right now that people are looking to adopt is the voice AI technology, which is meant to potentially displace or shift some of the labor in the organization. A voice AI agent can be taking an order for the customer through the drive-through, and then that allows the labor that would be normally utilized for that to be placed elsewhere in the restaurant that can improve the guest experience. And so there's some actual return on investment that I think people are missing out on if they don't adopt these technologies.
Could you guys imagine having like 10 restaurants and you have 3 different POS stations that you have to be able to call home to. The POS station is like the center, like we're the center of everything for the future of the restaurants, it seems.
And why do you think that is? Do you think they just start growing and there's like, oh, we just add POS after POS, or do they get stuck in a place where they can't get out of, they feel like?
So I've seen restaurant chains that have 500 locations switch POS stations. It's just a matter of what is right for you in the moment. And now can't be, is it right for us today? It has to be, is it right for us 10 years from now?
Yeah.
Because everything that they're going to be doing is like revolving around that with technology. So the pricing integrations, the order confirmations, even the camera AI functions that are going to be happening are all going to be around the POS stations.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we didn't really talk about. Another ROI thing is the POS, being able to change the pricing inside the POS and having that automatically flow into your content and into your content management system, so it's displayed. So that's some real-time updating versus having to have somebody who updates it in the POS system and then separately updates it on the screen, and then potentially having a time lag where there's a mismatch. So that can cause some problems for people, and that's a nice technology feature that we can offer.
Yeah. I was going to say that I think that sort of ties into, like I said, the ecosystem of the products that we offer. It offers efficiencies to our customers in that they don't have to go to one person for the OCS integration and another customer for the printed graphics that are going on the wall, another one for the digital menu screens. That it really solves a major hassle of coordinating all these deliveries that are going to the same place and having, just the entire branding package under one roof. And, one delivery shows up at the restaurant, you put everything in, everything's great, and you start making money.
I think one of the things that's unique too about our technology is you have the ability with the content management system to set different levels of permissions. So if you want to give your franchisees permission to change pricing but not items, you can make sure that you have consistency from location to location. And corporately, they can have permissions to make those other changes on their own. And then we have the ability to either help with those changes if they'd rather have us manage the content for them, or we can do training so that they can manage their content. And so it's nice that we have that flexibility to be able to do that multiple ways, but it gives them some control over their content and how much leeway they want to give to their individual franchisees. Or
I think that the most successful restaurant brands, at least that we work with, have a nice, like a home base where they can put in a lab system for all the technology, but also showing off some of the signage that's in there. So when they have franchisees come visit, say, hey, this is like kind of what your kitchen's going to be laid out like. Yeah. This is how this brand goes, so that they can get an idea of how it actually works. Because otherwise some franchisees come in and go, well, my ideas are better than yours. Yeah. So having a really nice franchise agreement and a nice place to bring franchisees in is not always necessary, because you can always use location number one as your your baseline. But once you get to the point where you have an office, it's good to have a space in there to be like, okay, hey, this is what this is going to feel like.
Yeah. What would your advice be to a brand that doesn't feel like they can make a whole store, their test store? I mean, how difficult is piloting in the field location?
I think it's super difficult.
Yeah, we often recommend a lab setup at their corporate headquarters if they have the space for it, so that they can test and try out things before it goes live out in the field.
Take it as far as you can, right? So if you're fresh into trying to grow, your first couple locations might look a little bit different, but really by the time you get to 10 to 20 restaurants, you should really start having a plan of, this is how this is going to stay the same at each location. This is what this is like the pillar of our brand. This is what we do, kind of thing. And they have to be able to tell that at every single location. So utilizing in Howard Company terms, we have to attack it from a couple different ways. We do all the print solutions, then the design part of it, and then implementing the technology part of it too.
Yeah, I think that kind of ties into the next question I have, which is what would you say to someone who's overwhelmed about all these different branding, signage, and technology solutions? So kind of going off what I asked before of, voice AI, if somebody's scared to test it, how they slowly get into it, if they're scared of kiosks for the first time, because that's a big trend too right now. I mean, what would you say to those brands?
I mean, I would start out by coming and talk to us,
Yeah.
and who are experts in it, right? We've done this with lots and lots of brands, and so I think we have the expertise to be able to start with a demo, right? And we can show them what it looks like. We have an area in our building where we have test fixtures set up that people can come in and see, and get a demo and touch and feel and see what it's going to look like. After that, I think they do have to have a strategy to test things, but like one of the strategies we can do with voice AI is we can test it during non-peak hours and then turn it off when they're really busy so that they have the chance to practice with it and see how it goes. The voice AI companies that we work with, they also have the ability to basically listen for a period of time. So like they may listen to that order taking for a month and be able to really learn, have the machine learning, understand what the customer is saying and validate the data before it goes live. And so I think there's a lot of things we can do along the way to gradually implement those solutions and reduce the risk along the way.
Yeah. Voice AI is easy because if you don't, in May of 2025, if you don't have at least 25 restaurants, you can't do it.
Yeah.
So like, unfortunately for our
Just
listeners,
from a cost standpoint.
yeah, no, I mean they're those companies right now are looking at enterprise to down to 50, maybe between 25 to 50 if you're lucky. But the amount of money that they're putting in to do that, it's just like it's not going to be in the cards for them. Like, because there's, the larger the enterprise brands of the world are testing them out, and all their development time is going towards that. But besides that, though, like if somebody's wondering about, well, what kind of branding package do I need? What are the things I need to put on the wall on the inside? What do I dress the outside with? Our people here are a great resource. We have centuries of experience. It's our job to know what everybody from 5 to 500 locations is putting up in their restaurants, to be able to consult people to tell them, okay, like this is an idea, you need this. You might want to spend more money here versus where you spend it there. If you're already out there, do you have a 90% going through your drive-through lane, or do you not have a drive-through lane at all? Because that's going to change how we tell you that you need to set things up.
Yeah. One of the things I mentioned in the first episode that is kind of along these lines of, if somebody's so overwhelmed that they hear kiosks, digital menu boards, AI, and they're like, oh, I'm still at static. And, how do I get ahead of the game? How do I compete with the competition? I think the good thing about our offerings is if somebody's interested in AI, you slowly move from static to a board that is hybrid, static and digital, and then you slowly move to AI down the road. It doesn't all need to happen at once, or should it? So if you had to give one piece of advice or one action that a brand could take right now to make them go to the next level when it comes to signage and technology, what would be that?
I would absolutely start with thinking about a future-proofing strategy. I think we did a webinar about future-proofing, and even if they're currently on static menu boards, things like adding the conduit that you would need later on to pull data runs, that's one of the biggest barriers we have when we do remodel locations with customers, is if you're upgrading from a static to a digital menu board, you don't have that conduit there to get the data from your network out to the board. So I would start doing that even if you're on a static strategy right now, is making sure you're future-proofing by putting in the right conduit runs. That's a start. And then beyond that, I think, indoor digital is a nice place to start before you go to the outside. I think that's probably one of the easiest upgrades to make and to practice with. And that gives you a chance to work with the content management systems and try them out before you do an outdoor digital system in the drive-thru, which is a little more complicated.
Why is that?
The outdoor?
Yeah.
Well, indoor, you don't have to worry about order confirmation.
Yeah.
You're normally not dealing with a voice AI solution, so there's less complexity to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that you have to be careful on what your objective is. So figure out what your objective is first. We have a lot of people that come to us and go, well, I have to have order confirmation, but your objective is to sell more of a certain product, or order confirmation maybe isn't that. So depending on how much money you have and what you're willing to part with, you want to be able to understand what that objective is and then talk to a professional about how you're going to get to that objective. A lot of people want to be able to just open up restaurants, and they're okay with the static menu board. Like Jersey Mike's has done a great job without doing a lot of digital menu boards, and they're putting in location after location, and the graphics package is fairly simple. But you go to a place like a Portillo's where it's more of like the experience when you walk in. So it's really about the objective about what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
I would say along those lines, the objective for a lot of our customers is to try to have more sales revenue per location. And so that one of the, if besides indoor digital, one of the things that I might recommend people start experimenting with is the self-ordering kiosks, because we've been able to demonstrate with data a rate of return, and especially with the upselling capability, we're talking, 28% higher ticket sales, right? And so that's a real number. Like, that's a big deal, right? When we can get customers that are at their locations to spend more on every single transaction, that really provides a rate of return in the long run that is going to pay for that digital technology.
Yeah, you really have to look at your different revenue streams. So, like, you go into a convenience store and there's 100 different revenue streams in there, from selling propane tanks to chocolate bars, everything else. Restaurants are going to end up being a little bit of the same way. So if your drive-through is revenue stream, your interior is a revenue stream, your pickup lane is revenue stream, your third-party delivery is a revenue stream, how are you going to put those puzzle pieces together to get the most profitable thing for you? And that's more technology than it is branding signage. But the story that people get told, the experience that they have when they come up to your curbside pickup, is going to determine if they do it again and what frequency they're going to come back to your place again. So you have to do it right the first time, because people will not come back. They'll come back, but it may not be for 3 months. And if they really enjoy the process, like, that was really easy last time and the food was good, swing in, and then your frequency goes up.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to go practical. As a growing brand, you have to stay organized. You have to know what you have in each location. We work with many companies, many brands that rely on us to know what they have in location XYZ in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. We're happy to do it, and we're good at doing it, but it just makes the process so much easier when when you can come in and that in, all of these locations, we've got this size menu board, we've got a double digital drive-through, we've got this kind of clearance bar, we've got, the order confirmations, and you know what you have in all your different locations. It just makes it a lot easier to get a new order through the system. So be organized, know what you have, know what your people have, and try to guide your franchisees to try to really have a very standardized package.
It's a really hard thing for people, especially when they're so good at running a restaurant or a convenience store, to be like, do I have the knowledge and the know-how to do this and the time? Where you need to outsource a little bit of that to say, okay, like, I need to get somebody who does this for a living for 100 different brands to talk to me about it. Or you just push through and go, I know this and I can figure this out. And I would go to the latter every single time. Now, I'm not saying that we just give out free advice. We are a business. But I mean, we have a lot of people that okay, hey, how we get more business is by being knowledgeable, saying, okay, we're going to start by providing you a clearance bar, but then we're going to teach you how to lay out a drive-through lane for max capacity and throughput. And sometimes people don't understand that's part of what we do. Is we'll help you put your site plan together. We'll tell you where the menu board needs to be at what angle to get the best, so that two or three people could see the menu board at one time versus just the person that is in front of it. It's all about efficiency, and you can't go it alone.
What would you say is the most underrated branding solution?
Drive-through canopy. I think that like from now into the future, your drive-through canopy, if you have a drive-through restaurant, or your building awning if you don't, is something that draws people to you. So if you brand it correctly, and it's unique to you, but still like fairly, systematic for the industry, it gives people that's the chicken place I go to. It's a landing spot.
What are some of the features of a canopy that people might not?
The ability to actually brand it. There's lights in most canopies, so there's electrical power that's put to it, so you can do different kinds of lighting. You can do different drop downs off of it. You do want to make sure that it can rotate in most situations. There's wind load situations in the southern parts of the country where you can't do things that rotate, but we get videos of semis hitting clearance bars and canopies, and some of them, you're just like, when it gets hit by a semi, it is what it is. But there's been others where it's like, oh, hey, it moved. The person who was driving understood that they had just hit a clearance bar, and then they back out. Okay, then that saves a lot of your investment over the course of time.
I think another feature of canopies that people don't always think about is the lighting in them. So in locations where maybe somebody doesn't want to drive up at night when it's dark, it doesn't feel safe from a security standpoint, that lighting helps with that to make people feel safer going to a drive-through window, opening their window at night. Yeah,
and usually the drive-through menu boards like by the dumpsters at the back. So.
Right.
I mean, I think about it from just like, as not even in like a restaurant. As you go and drive around neighborhoods, and you just see somebody, you have no idea what their house looks like at night, but it just looks inviting based off of that all the lights are, that there's lights on.
Any more underrated pieces of signage, maybe from a marketing standpoint? That
I think that the preview board is so vital, because what Gary was saying, we can help you set up the drive-through so that you can get as many people seeing the board as possible. But if you can keep that line moving because somebody has seen a preview board and has picked out their thing before they even get up to the ordering station, I think it just makes it move so much faster. And I would also just add that having a graphic design team that knows how to set up a menu to draw the people's eye to your highest margin items, that is a skill that I think is very, very underrated. And the menu board should be your number one selling tool. And obviously you want to sell the things that you're going to make the most money on. So, putting those two things together, I think, is important.
One of the more underutilized parts of branding signage is on the inside is community. We do a bunch of different kinds of small community things on the inside of restaurants, but restaurants really want to be seen as kind of like the cornerstone of the community. This is where people can gather and they can come, baseball team shows up in a bus, and you want to have something on the inside that shows like that you're a standing member of a community. And maybe it rotates around and you do different things, because there's people that come in, they see like, oh, we did a night where we sponsored, $2 from every sale went to this charity or this organization. People like that, and then they start, it all adds up to more frequency.
Yeah. There's a lot of brands that have foundations, and I feel like you don't see that exposure enough. I mean, Firehouse Subs does a great job with showcasing that all the time, but both indoor and the drive-through, I feel like there's a lot of opportunities when it comes to that. So, okay. One last question, and we kind of wrap up each podcast episode with a fun kind of get to know you question. So, each of you have grown your careers to the point where you're directors, VPs, presidents, but I want to know where it all started. what was the first job where you got money from, they paid you, and do you have any good stories that come along with it?
Like first ever job?
Mhm.
Wow.
I go first. I was a grocery store stocker, like Tuesday and Friday nights, getting pallets of groceries from Roundy's, putting them on the shelf. Worked my way up to cashier, and then unfortunately with sports I couldn't keep going.
Well, my first real job besides babysitter and dog sitter and stuff like that was at McDonald's. I was at one point in time, I worked at McDonald's, my sister and my brother's girlfriend and her two sisters, all six of us worked at the same McDonald's. And there were some times that we were all working on the same shift. And believe me, as a person who in the future owned restaurants, I apologize for what we did while we worked at that McDonald's. I'm not going to say where it was, but we maybe bent the rules a little bit while we were there. But it was an excellent first job. Learned a ton. It was just really, really a good first job.
Well, like Jean, I babysat when I was young, but one of my high school jobs was working with a brand called Rocky Rococos. We did work with them. And I started, at a cashier, and kind of worked my way through all of the jobs there, like Gary, cutting up pizza, then making pizza, making the dough, and then eventually I got to be a delivery driver, which was my absolute favorite, being out in my car and listening to the radio. But it was interesting how certain people came to the door to get their pizza. So you'd be surprised at how many people would answer the door in questionable attire, like in their boxer shorts. It was, for a teenage girl, it was a little bit weird.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Did you ever have to deliver in any bad snowstorms or?
Oh, always. That was the time we were busiest. So when the weather is bad, whether it was a snowstorm or rain, pouring rain, that was the time we were busiest. So you knew when you came into work that if it was bad weather, nobody wants to go out. They want to order the pizza.
That's going to be the next thing, weather surcharge.
Oh, it was fun though. It was fun. And only once do I remember having to slam on my brakes hard enough that the pizza actually fell off of my front seat and went sideways and everything slid off. But the people were very understanding. They were like, oh, it's bad weather.
I was a caddy, and we did some outings, and there was a Chicago Blackhawks outing, and I played with this guy, or I caddied for him for 18 holes, and I didn't recognize the name. I go in my car afterwards, look it up. I talked to my dad afterwards. I caddied for Hall of Famer Dennis Savard, who played for the Blackhawks and all this stuff. And I'm sure he appreciated somebody not knowing and not giving attention. But I still feel bad. But I'm sure he's listening to this podcast, so I'm sorry. Thank you all for joining and giving your insights. Hope to do more of this stuff down the road. And thank you everybody for watching. We hope to see you next time.